that I'm gonna do today. Um, and then at the end of class, I'm just once I do the demos and explain a few things, I'm just gonna do a quick screenshot to make for attendance to make sure I get all your names in there. So thank you for joining. I miss seeing all of you. I was really excited to see the work that you made for the character design last week. That was awesome. With this project, I mentioned it's a little more in depth. So I wanted to take some time with the demo of getting you started to have this Google Meet because I wanted you to give you the opportunity to ask questions or do as I'm demoing. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have done Google Meets with other classes yet, but on the top, there's the little chat spot right here. So you can type in a message. So if I'm demoing something, you can type something in if you have a question. And then if I see it, I'll try to answer it right away. Otherwise, I'll go back to it at the end of the demo here. And then once I get through a few pieces, then we'll have a little time at the end if you want to hang out longer and ask questions or show me what you're working on, show me your screen, share your screen, things like that. You can do that. Okay. So first thing I just want to show you is I'm getting better at Schoology. So I do want to show a couple changes that I made to the layout here. So I'm going to share my screen in just a second here. Okay, so, all right. I think you can see my screen. Can someone type in the chat right here if you can see my screen? So give me a yes. I'm assuming you can. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so now I'm showing you the Schoology page. So I changed the layout. So the top folder here is just the weekly overview. And the goal is that you can look forward and kind of see where you're supposed to be at. You can also make this bigger. And inside this folder, I've put every past assignment. So if you need to go back to something, especially presentations or just wondering what we did, they're all available for you. And then the weekly overview that's on that main page, you can access in Schoology through here. Then anything that I'm putting in for videos or slideshows or things like that in our daily assignments, I'm also putting in, or at least trying to put them in for the project assignments. So you at this point are looking at the vector poster design. So it doesn't show up as pretty with a preview here, but the project details are going to be in here. So that's just that page with all the requirements that I had on the slideshow. The intro is just that the slideshow with me narrating it. And then I'm going to start to put in some tutorials that will help you. There is one in there already. That's the face tutorial. So if you know that you want to be creating a face and maybe you want to go more in depth than just your character design, you could start with that and I'll add more in there as well. Okay. Um, then I'm gonna just go through, oh, one last thing before I do that. I am getting closer to being done with grading or catching up with grading. I put in your project 2 finally. Thanks for your patience. I tried to write comments, so let me know if you have questions for that. And then your word is as image, I'll come up and be grading that hopefully by the end of the week. So make sure that's in. And then I won't get to the character design probably till next week. So I put um, I'm gonna go back to this page right here. So under project 4, the character design, in here and that our graffiti wall, our discussion, I went in and I wrote a comment for all of you in there. So if you want to go back and tweak anything and then rehand your PNG and go for that, you'll have till next week till I start grading those. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions. And so far, yes, we're good. You can see my screen. All right. Then I am going to switch the screen that I'm going to share. So I'm actually going to stop presenting for just a second. And I'm going to represent because I'm working with 2 screens here. So I'm going to go through Illustrator and starting to set up your poster for Illustrator. Some of you might have done this already. I'm gonna switch over to here. Okay, so in the chat, someone tell me if you're seeing now the Illustrator, my Illustrator screen. Yes, perfect. Okay, so I know quite a few are using Gravit Designer, which I'm hearing that some of you really like, which is great. I am just gonna demo today with Illustrator because a lot of the stuff that you'll do in Gravit Designer will be very similar with the process. The layout will just be a little bit different, okay? So when you get to your main page here, you'll click Create New. As we've done before, you're going to do print. So you'll just set this up a little bit differently in Gravit Designer. And then for both of them, you're looking for tabloid. Tabloid is 11 by 17, so it gives us that nice long poster size. If you want to double check it, switch to inches. And then, so you can see I've got my 11 by 17 here, okay? I wrote 300 DPI on there, but if you do print, it should automatically do the 300. Oh, we can see it down here. But I know for Gravit Designer, I think you can adjust that, so just look for that. All right, then you'll click Create. All right, and we've got this nice big layout. This is a little bit different than our 8.5 by 11 because it's longer. So you might have to adjust some of your sketches with the layout that way because it creates a little bit trickier with the space with the length. I looked at your sketches and we've got some really great ideas going. One thing I noticed is we've got a lot of vectors in your sketches, but make sure you're also including in your sketch, and you don't have to re-upload it, but just include where you're going to be putting your text, because that does make a difference with where you put your vector and how you lay that out as well. So with creating this, with our Word as Image project, we started talking a little bit more about layers and how to use those. With this project, you'll definitely want to pay attention to your layers and really use those layers. Otherwise, it's going to start to get confusing with what you're working with. So when I'm working with my layers over here, you're going to want to use your reference images if you want to. Most of you will want to use a picture to draw on top of to help you. If you have something different in mind, that's fine. But it does really help you place things and get things looking how you want it. So I've already searched for my reference images. I'm saving them all in one folder, and I'll show you my folder. I got really excited about my reference images, so there's a lot. But you're also going to want to save your document in the same place. Okay, so if you're working from an image, you will go to File, Place. And then, so on my desktop, this is where I'm storing everything. I made Project 5, poster design, and then what I'm designing is I'm actually working on writing a children's book with my son. So he's 5. And we make up stories together. It's mostly him making up the stories. So I'm taking his stories and I'm going to start creating a children's book, but I'm just in the beginning phases of it. And so it's going to be, I'm going to start to create the characters from it. I thought I was going to do it for the character design, but I didn't. So I'm like, I'm going to start it with this. So I am putting him on there. So I found an image with a kid with a hoodie, and I'm going to do place with that one in there. Okay. So when I put this in here, remember you'll want to click and drag so you can kind of get the size that you want. When I was searching for my images, I did not choose a high resolution image, which doesn't matter as much with this project because we're just creating a vector with it. And it might actually be nice because then I can just get the general idea of the layout and I don't have to worry about the details as much. So I'm okay with a pixelated image here. Once you get this here, I would definitely lock it, okay? I also recommend that you name your layers. So if you double click on it, I'm gonna say, so this is gonna be, actually I'll do reference photo because this is what I'm referencing in order to create my vector. And then I'm gonna lock that, okay? Then I'm gonna go to the bottom here. I'm gonna do the plus. And this is where I'm gonna start creating my design, okay? Um, I would say each different vector should essentially have its own layers. That's what I recommend. So maybe for this one is gonna be um, Ozzy, and the name of the book is The Adventures of Bunny and Ozzy. So my next layer maybe is gonna be Bunny. And you can tweak these later. I'm just giving you an idea of what it would look like. And then eventually we'll add in our text, okay? A bulk of your points for this project is gonna be your vector. So really spend a lot of time on those. All right, and maybe for now, you don't have to make them all ahead of time, but since I did, I'll just lock them so that I don't start drawing on those other layers. All right, now I'm on the layer I want to start working on. You are deciding, especially based on the tutorial that you did for your character design, like how you want to go about this. You can, do different shape tools and kind of manipulate them, or you can work strictly with the pen tool or combine different things together. If you feel really lost with this, not really sure where to go, then I would recommend that you choose a tutorial. So if you know you want to design like a bike, you could Google search Illustrator dash bike tutorial and just search up some and just follow someone helping you through that process. If you want to do this totally on your own, then what I recommend you do, I'm going to give you a few tips that will be helpful for you. When you're creating your vectors, you want to always close your paths. This is the biggest mistake that I see kids happening with kids when they start doing this project is I'm going to come to the pen tool and they're like, okay, I'm going to create, the shoulder. So they'll come and I'm just going to do just a really quick, not so great shape here just to show you. And they'll come and they'll be like, okay, I'm done with this, and it looks like it fills correctly. But once you start adding layers on layers, it doesn't work how you want. Okay, so what you're really going to want to look for, I'm going to zoom in here, is I recommend that you work kind of background to foreground, and I'll show you. I'll just do a little demo and then I'll show you what I've done on another screen. And just to FYI, I have the chat open on my other screen. So if you have questions as we're going through this, type them in, and if I see it pop up, then I'll go back to it. One question is, can we use a horizontal layout? Yes, you definitely can. Okay, so zoom in close. Then working background to foreground. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to come and I'm actually going to create that whole outline of this sweatshirt to start. I recommend that you don't have a fill as you do this. So I'm actually going to click here and do no fill and just do your outline. It's going to be much easier for your pen tool. And then I'm going to come around and notice if you're using the pen tool, you don't have to do a ton of clicks, okay? Just kind of get that nice shape. It's gonna look way better if you're not clicking a ton. Another tip with working with the pen tool, if you hold down Option, if you have a Mac, it might be Alt if you have a PC. You can bring up this little point and then I can actually move my handle in and change the direction of the handle so it goes a different way once I start working. Okay, so on Schoology, I have included some references for you on using the pen tool. There's also a ton of stuff that you can search for, like do a Google search for. All right, so I'm just gonna get just a really rough layout quickly here to show you closing your paths and how you would kind of build on this. So once I get to the bottom here, I'm gonna do one more point, and then you can see underneath my pen, I can't really highlight it at the moment, but so right now I move my pen away and there's no circle, but once I get on top of that, my first anchor point, I can see that circle. That means I'm gonna close the path, okay? So I've closed it, and then if I ended up filling it, it would look like this, okay? So it fills all the way. Now I'm going to keep it unfilled and I'm going to start bringing in some of the details. So in this case, I want to get a little more depth. So I'm going to bring in some lights and darks. So I'm going to start away from my path because so I'm going to make like this dark shadow area inside the hood. I want to start away from my path because if I start here, it's just going to delete that anchor point. So maybe I'll start right here. I'm going to come in and bring it around, and eventually I can have it meet my path. You can add it so it kind of follows along that same area. And then I'm going to bring it down here. And once again, I'm going to close this. Okay. So I want to make sure it closes. And now I have multiple paths here. Okay. So now when I go to my layers, you can see my Aussie layer. I've got a little preview of what's going on. Right next to my white box here is a down arrow. When I click on that, it's going to show me both of those paths that I've made so far. So in order to access those quickly, I can just click on the circle right next to it and you can see it switching back and forth between those. Okay, so I already did some of this on another document. So I'm actually gonna pull that up and show you. So I've got my reference here, and then this is what I've done so far. Okay, so I'm gonna take this one off because I just have my paths here. So once you get a lot of paths, what I did is I'm just looking for the darker and lighter areas to bring in some shadows and highlights. And now I've got a ton of paths. So once I want to start selecting some of those, sometimes it's easier to just click over here to select it really quickly. Okay. Then once I click this, then I can start filling stuff in. So maybe I'll switch this so I don't have an outline anymore. I'm going to choose the color that I want. I'm going to go with red for the moment. And then if I go back to my layers, I'm going to choose my next one, the inside of the hoodie, rather than it just being an outline. I'm going to go back to that color that I had. So I can either choose it from here, or I can click I on my keyboard and grab the eyedropper. So you can see it filled it with that color, but I want to be able to see it. So I want it to be darker. So I'm going to go up here and I can either double click on here and choose a darker color, or I can slide this and I can choose a darker color from here. This is actually adding more cyan. I would do the K, the black, to make it darker. Okay, so then I would keep going after I've done all of these, and I would just keep clicking on them to change the value and build that up. Okay, and then you can always take the eye off of certain layers or paths to see how that looks as well. So let's say I wanted to add more in here. I could just take that eye off, come in with my pen tool, and add some more to that. I'm going to show you a couple other things that you'll want to know. So as I was adding more in here, it's going to look kind of weird if things that are supposed to be in front or behind are in front and vice versa. So in this case, this little part right here is supposed to be a highlight, but I made it later than everything else. So it's actually in front of my shadow, the part that's supposed to be kind of a little more forward. So remember, you can right click and do arrange. And then you can choose, in this case, I would want to have that dark part brought forward so it looks like it's in front. And then it's going to give a different feel. I've got a little bit of an edge sticking out here. So that's when I could come with my direct selection and I could click just on that anchor point and move it around and kind of tuck it in. And I could also play with those handles as well to align that differently. Okay, so it's going to take a little tweaking once you do it. My other tip for you is to use the smooth tool. So on the left side, you'll probably see the shaper tool show up, but the smooth tool, if you just run along there, that's going to help even that out and smooth out those areas that don't always look great when you come in with the pen tool. Okay. So think about working from background to foreground. So background is the whole hood in this case, and then in front of it is the lights and darks with the shadow. This is going to look a little different for all of you, but that's kind of the general idea on what you're going to do for that. Let me see. There might be one or two more things. I recommend that you work without an outline. So I'm eventually changing these to a fill. If you know that you do want an outline on it, I would actually recommend that you add that later, or maybe just add it to one part. So maybe I'm just only going to add um, an outline to this background and not to all my individual light and dark areas. Okay, so think specifically where you would want your outline to go if you feel like you need it in there. And I'll adjust that a little bit later as well. All right, I want to get you all moving on here from here by 2 o'clock. And so that's about 5 minutes from now. So at this point, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat because someone else might have it as well. So the question is, if we have an iPad, can we draw some details on there and upload it as well, or should everything be made on Illustrator? So I do want like a chunk of it made in Illustrator because I want you just working with those vectors, but I'm totally okay if you have a tablet, or if you want to like design like the base vectors in Illustrator and then bring it to your iPad and so that you can draw directly on it and add some more pieces, go ahead, you can definitely do that as well. Other questions at the moment? Okay, so that's all I have for the moment. So you're doing 11 by 17. That's the size of your document, 300 dpi, choose vertical or horizontal, find your reference images that you want to place in there, and then start tracing over them to get your vectors and spend lots of time with your vectors, okay? I'm going to do a really quick screenshot so that I can get all of you who are here for attendance. Make sure you get that. Oops, let me do it one more time. All right, so thanks for joining. If you want to stay on for a little bit longer and like ask some questions, then go ahead and stay. One question is, I was using the pen tool for this. Yes, I was using the pen tool. You can play with some other tools as well, but yes, I was using the pen tool.